Welcome to the Heartland Journal podcast with Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I have missed you a ton. Glad to be back at it. I'm still Steve Abramowitz, and this is still the Heartland Journal podcast. Please hit that subscribe button and pass it around. Thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Sanjar Rohãm. Sanjar Rohãm, an Iranian American, was an in-demand successful business consultant in Los Angeles before the 2008 crash of the U.S. economy compelled him to rethink his career choices after discovering an advertisement for a translator fluent in Pashto and willing to serve as an interpreter with the U.S. Marines. By October 2010, he was on the front lines of Operation Enduring Freedom in the Taliban stronghold of Helmand province in Afghanistan, fighting suspicions from Marines because of his Persian ethnicity, as well as from Afghan interpreters. Rohãm attempted to prove himself by volunteering for every mission the command would allow, experiencing mortar attacks, IED detonations, losses of friends, and the additional dangers of being a foreigner in a land that promises harm to outsiders. His book, Land of Tears, is a gritty, make you squirm reflection on the sorrow, horror, and guilt that the American experience in Afghanistan inflicted on him. Rohãm's candor about the challenges and his humility about the commitment he upheld makes him feel like an old, respected friend to readers. From Iran to LA to Afghanistan and home again, let's meet this brave man and thank him for his service. Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I hear your voice is recovering. That's good. We can actually have this conversation, and thank you for your service. So you're not a Marine, but working for a private contractor attached you to Marines in Afghanistan. Is that right?
That's correct.
Before we get into that and your time in country, what do you remember from your years in Iran before the revolution?
Well, those were some of the best years of my life. Everybody was prosperous. The country was nice. I had a nice childhood growing up, and basically came to the U.S. prior to the revolution to study and get my education. Finish that up, go back to my country, and take over my father's job. But the revolution happened, and I never went back.
Wow, that's really an amazing story. So tell us about your dad and your grandmother. They had their worlds taken from them. What was it like for them?
Well, my dad was a very successful businessman. He had his own little empire that he ran with multiple offices all over the country. And imagine one morning you wake up and you're basically, on the run for your life and you're fugitive from your own government. So he basically fled the country with the clothes on his back, leaving everything behind. And I always say, also, his name came up, was printed, published on a list of people who were supposed to be executed, captured and executed. He was a blacklist by the Islamic government. These are in the beginning stages of the revolution. So he fled the country with just the clothes on his back. And sometimes I thought maybe it was best if he was captured and shot, because he died a little bit every day when he came to the US. He would get up every morning, shower, shave, dress up, and with no place to go. And literally, he had lost his interest to live anymore.
Oh gosh. And
So
this story must be repeated over millions of times with a lot of people like him that thought they went to bed that night thinking, what am I going to do this week? Or what's my business plan for 2000 and, or I guess 19, whatever, 76. And the next day, nope, you got to get the heck out of here or you're done.
yeah, well, they he owned a major shopping center in one of the cities in Iran, actually, that is has had one of the highest number of casualties, from what I understand. City of Rasht in the north by the Caspian Sea. He owned the biggest shopping mall in Rasht, which is still there. Actually, it still stands, the shopping mall. And they took it from him. The mullahs took it from him, and they put him in jail. And they were supposed to execute my dad in the next coming days while he was in jail. And he was able to sign over the deed to the mullahs and to be released. But he wasn't sure even if he signed over the deed, they would let him go. They did. And again, he just left the country with the clothes on his back.
Wow, they just stole everything he built his
They
whole
just
life.
did everything. Yeah.
What's your name mean in English?
Well, it's Sanjar is from the Seljuki dynasty. It basically means like a warrior king. And Roham also means like it comes from the Shahnameh, Ferdowsi Shahnameh, which is again one of the most cherished possessions for the Iranians. And that also is like a champion king. So
A
one
champion,
is from the Seljuki dynasty, and one is from the Shahnameh.
a warrior king in
Yeah.
Persian, basically. I have your book right here. Um, Fascinating. And you growing up in Los Angeles as a Persian and a Jew, what was California like for you and your brothers?
Actually, it was great. I came to California, lived in Texas for a year before I came to California. And this is prior to the revolution. So in Texas, they didn't even know what Iran was or where Iran was. I remember the first day of school, the principal came into the classroom and he put a map on the blackboard and he said, please show everybody where you're from. So I pointed it out and everybody was looking at and asking me questions. How many wives my dad had, how many camels we owned, how many tents we lived in. And I was laughing at this stuff. The Iranians obviously aren't Arabs. And it's a completely separate culture. But Texas was great. I have nothing except good things to recall from my time in Texas. And California, LA was great. I had a great upbringing here.
Did
It
you
was a
re
great.
did you resent your brothers for leaving Iran for English school, England, and leaving you behind at all?
No, because I was supposed to go back with them to England to attend boarding school. They came to Iran for the last for summer break, and at the last minute, my mother decided instead of sending me to England, we're all going to come to the U.S. So we came to the U.S. She was supposed to get us situated in America, go back to Iran, spend a few months here, a few months there. We would go to school, and that'd be that. We would eventually go back to Iran and then, live our jolly lives. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
And you went to private Jewish school. What memories do you have of Iranian society in relation to Jewish kids in the 70s?
Um, Look, in any society, there's always, you're going to find people who are prejudiced toward color, toward religion, toward whatever, especially in today's world that we're living in. Was there certain issues as far as prejudice is concerned? Absolutely, for sure. I'm not going to make it a whitewash that and make it like everything was nice and dandy. But was it a comfortable life? Definitely, 100%. It was a safe country. It was a beautiful country, and I just loved it.
So there was multiculturalism, even with the ancient religions at the time, but all that went away when it became a theocracy with the revolution. Your father told you about the four angels in the book. Do you remember that still? And did you love your father even after your mother left him?
I mean, you only have one father and one mother. Did I love my dad? Do I still love him? Of course. Did he make mistakes? 100%. But yeah, certain things that he told me as a kid growing up, like, enjoy it today because it's not going to last. And I would laugh at him and say, what the hell is this guy talking about? And now that I've gotten older, I look back and I look at my friends' kids and my nephews, and I tell them, look, man, my dad used to tell me this, and I used to laugh at him. You got to take today by the horns and just squeeze as much out of it as you can because you got to look back one day. It goes by too fast. and you're going to say, hey, what the hell happened to my life? Where did all those years go? What did I do? So a lot of that stuff, I guess, comes with age. As you get older, you kind of reflect back, and you realize, I wish I knew the meaning of this word when it was said to me initially. But such is life.
Such is life. That's why we love having wise elders and mentors and parents who can actually guide us through their, it'd be a very good lesson for America today. What happened with your brothers and their wives that made you want to leave LA for the military?
Well, it was at 2008, 2009, the real estate market crash. It was, I don't know if you recall, it was a kind of a challenging time. And we had a nice business going together. And there was always this underlying thing that, my sister-in-laws thought that I'm just, riding on my brother's coattail for a free ride and basically getting money for nothing. But it was a partnership. And when that happened, and again the economy crashed and everything was just kind of collapsing all around us, I thought, this is a chance to, kind of save the brotherhood and just liquidate what we have, what we can, and let me find a different path in life. And I had no intention. If you had told me and I said this in the book, if you had told me in February of 2010 that by October of 2010 I was going to be in Afghanistan, I would put money against you. I would bet money against you. I had no desire, no clue. I knew what was going on from what was on the news, and I kept up with the news and everything. But I had zero interest to pursue something like that. But I
Wow.
think the guy upstairs kind of directs us in the way he wants us to go.
What a difference 8 months makes, I guess.
Yeah.
So what is gamma phobia and why do you diagnose yourself as having that?
Gamophobia is fear of commitment. And I guess without going into too much detail, growing up, experiencing what I experienced as a child, it just kind of um, made me have a fear of commitment. I didn't want to commit to specifically to people. I didn't want to have commitment to people because I thought at some point they're going to leave me. That's what it is. So I always kind of isolated myself. I never committed to a relationship. It was very superficial commitment, but
Oh,
I would kind of sabotage it myself. And before the person gets a chance to leave me, I'm gonna leave. So it was like a self-preservation type of, I guess, reaction or anticipation, preemptive anticipation for what could happen, which a lot of times it wasn't the case. So that just kind of prevented me from sticking around for too long.
yeah, that was one of the greatest character arcs in the book from my perspective is how you had to obviously overcome this, whether it's a real disease or just your opinion of yourself with your bonding of your fellow soldiers and translators. But we'll get into that in a second. Did you come back home to Sophie or stay single? The book doesn't tell us about the happily ever after or not.
No, I stayed single.
You did. All right. That's you
Stayed
still
single.
all
Yeah,
right.
that's one of the things my mother always tells me. She says, "You know what? You missed your chance with that one. It is what it is." You know how mothers are. What am I going to tell my mom?
Exactly. I think because no grandkids. I think your job was vital to the war effort, maybe even more than the soldiers shooting the bullets on the ground. To translate is a unique American war experience, like the Cherokee wind talkers and the code breakers in World War II. It gave us the advantage, America. What because we understood our enemies, their language, their culture, their dialect, it's huge. It's everything. So, what unique subtleties are there in Pashto and Dali did you discover that made communicating with them helpful to our mission?
Yes, it's actually Dari,
Dari,
DAR. Yeah,
Dari,
Dari
Dari.
is the Yeah, Dari is the Afghan language. Obviously, both are Pashto and Dari, but Pashto is kind of divided between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakistanis don't speak Dari, but Afghans do speak both, mostly speak both. Um, the interesting thing is when I started studying Pashto, it has the alphabet kind of resembles Farsi and Dari. So for me, it was easy to read it, even though I didn't know what I was reading. I could read it. A couple of the alphabet, they sound differently, but uh, and the culture, there's a lot of similarities between the culture. At the same time, there's a vast difference between the two cultures because in some ways I think Iran, because how quickly it was progressing prior to the revolution, it left Afghanistan in its dust as far as advancement and everything else. So Iran became took on a more of a I want to say a Western culture and expanded its horizon, whereas Afghanistan kind of stayed idle in the past. Uh, so there were nuances of cultural similarities that I was already aware of, especially because, and this is not meant as a put down, but the Afghan culture resembled more of a village culture, whereas Iran's culture represented more of a country's culture. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
More cosmopolitan and
More
less
cosmopolitan.
tribal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then again, my dad, his employees came from small villages from all over the country, and they would invite us every year to go to their village for celebrations. So I was already familiar with the village culture, even though I lived in a city. I was born in a city and lived in a city.
Yeah.
I was very familiar with that village structure, the culture, and how things happened.
Yeah, you
Uh,
drop some country boy from Tennessee or Texas or even LA or New Jersey into the middle of that. No way are they going to understand the cultural differences. Whereas you were the bridge to be able to say, no, wait a minute, let's diffuse the situation like this because they don't know what you're talking about, homie.
yeah. Well, I'll give you a couple of examples actually. Uh, on a couple of different missions, breaking wind in front of the Afghans, farting basically in front of the Afghans was a huge disrespect. For the Marines, you got a bunch of Marines, they put their finger up their nose, that stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's
eating
not a
those
big,
sea rations, that'll do that.
yeah, boy, you don't need to remind me.
It's in the
But
book, everybody. It's in the book.
yeah, so, like stuff, small nuances like that, you really had to be careful. Or like relieving yourself, taking a leak,
Right. Or even
someplace.
just making a mom joke, right? I mean, here it's no big deal, but there they'll take your head off.
They take it very seriously. So I really had to kind of keep an eye on some of the young the Marines that were basically the higher ups, the higher in the rank. They obviously had a certain understanding and very sensitive toward this stuff. But the younger ones, the lower rank Marines, they're a bunch of kids. So they really didn't have a good understanding of this stuff. So I felt I really had to kind of be protective of them and remind them, hey, if we're talking to these guys, don't fart in front of them, or don't belch in front of them, or there were a couple of instances where uh, we're passing by a graveyard and we had to stop, and some of the Marines wanted to relieve themselves, take a leak, and we got off the truck, and I said, listen, face this way, do not face the graveyard because they see you pissing on in that area. I mean, even in our culture, you don't go piss in a graveyard on someone's even close to a graveyard. It's just a sacrilege in some way. So small nuances like that, I kind of knew from my own culture and from the village culture in my country in Iran.
Mm.
So I was able to kind of transfer that into Afghanistan and be sensitive or at least uh, look out for stuff similar to that and other stuff that I would need to learn and teach myself, basically on the hands-on training.
Yeah, it's no wonder you were the most popular of the translators because you actually probably diffused a lot of these cultural things. How did you overcome the fear that you were a spy? By being people, you had to reply on you had to rely on these folks with your life. If they didn't trust you, that's not a good thing. How did you overcome their fear of you being maybe working for the enemy?
That, I mean, initially it really was it was jarring. It kind of made my footing kind of not stable. But I thought the only way, I couldn't say, it wasn't like I could go and explain to anybody, because what are you going to explain? What are you going to say? So I had to show. I decided my actions would speak louder than anything that I can say, and it was. I wasn't sure if that would work, but it did. Eventually, it did work because of my actions that I took, and sticking around, clean up the truck after we came back, and just volunteering and going on the missions, and then staying true to what I had committed to do.
Yeah. So
So
your actions proved to them that you were willing to die for their cause as opposed to spy on them and have them ambushed. Although they probably had that in their mind the whole time. What can you do? They're like you said, they're young Marine jocks.
yeah.
Why do you think in such I mean, we're seeing this today, such a homosexual hating society. In your book, you say any verbal epitaph, we just talked about a little bit, to men is an assault to their manhood, right? They'll freak out if you call them anything, unmanly. Yet, so much homosexual activity amongst the Muslims and even like bestiality with, in your book, Tony the Donkey. What kind of scene is that? I mean, it seems antithetical to their culture, yet so prevalent. T-boys, you called them. What's the disconnect? What do you make of this?
Well, it all goes back to being mentally dark, and mentally dark is, it's like the horses, how we put the blindfold on them and they can only see one thing in front of them and not having a peripheral vision. I think lack of education has kept the country, most of the country, in darkness. And it's control. When you keep the people in that state of mind, in that kind of a space, and this comes from religious zealots. It comes from the mullahs who preach this stuff. And we've seen on TV some of the stuff that they used to do, and I'm sure they still do, but they just don't broadcast it now. They're very smart folks. You just can't take that away from them.
And they're the ones with the T-boys.
Yeah, and the T-boy, chai bache, or chai bache is, again, as I mentioned in the book, had a specific task to perform. Well, two actually, the tea and obviously what came afterward. I just think it's the culture that is not willing to accept the reality of life as we know it today. They want to live according to 1400 years ago, unfortunately.
So it's more just male domination of both men and women, and we'll talk about women next. And it's just the way it is, and unfortunately, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
So your first firefight was with a group of women, Marines. At least I think it was the first. Did it change your perspective on women's capabilities aside from, peeing in a Gatorade bottle, standing up? And like I mentioned, our ability to bring along interpreters to communicate being unique to the Western military. But these jihadis, they don't respect women. They don't care about women unless they're shooting at them, I guess. Do you think the Afghanis were terrified that we let our women fight America?
Well, actually, that wasn't the first fight. I was with a group of guys on the first mission. But the one thing that was I would hear a lot from the Afghan population regarding the female Marines and female soldiers, um, was that their place is not on the battlefield, and they should not be there. Women, again, this is generalizing it in a very broad context. Women are considered possessions. They're not considered as an equal, or you're just supposed to have babies, and then you're a possession. You make the home, you cook the meals, you have pop babies out, and then that's it. And then at some point, then during actually one mission, one of the locals that had gone with us. He was a truck driver. We had hired him a couple of times. He was this Haji that had actually lived in Iran for a few years, and his kids lived in Iran. And one day he comes to me on one mission and he's laughing, and I tell him, Haji, what's up? You're in such a jovial mood today. And he says, I'm getting married. And this guy had to be probably in his early 50s. And I said, I thought you already had a wife in the, you had grown up kids going to university in Iran. He says, yeah, I already have a wife, but she's got, for lack of a better word, she's got too many miles on her. And I said, who are you marrying? Showed me the picture of this beautiful 17-year-old. And then this is the fun. I don't think I mentioned this in the book. I did not. He showed me the picture of her sister, a 13-year-old girl. And he said, if you want, for $500, I can get her for you. You can marry her and take her to America. And I'm thinking, well, how do we even respond to something like this? I didn't want to say, I didn't want to mock him. I didn't want to confront him because, again, it's a delicate balance. And I said, you know what? Serving with the military, working with the military, we're not allowed to do stuff like this, but in a very friendly tone. And I was saying, oh, believe me, if I could, I would do it, because I had to kind of build that connection so he would feel comfortable with me. I didn't want to shut them out completely.
Right.
But that was the thing, he was marrying a young girl, even though he already had a wife and had kids older than the girl that he was marrying. And he was so happy about it. I'm thinking, okay, well, there's not much I can do to change this culture, you know.
You mentioned the female Danish volleyball players. That must have driven them crazy, seeing them so liberated out in the open versus the young girl you couldn't remove from her village. That's a very profound scene, driving away with her, wanting to be freed. The teen bride, and they killed her just for talking to you.
Yeah.
Total cultural opposites. Danish volleyball players, young girl doesn't even get to live to see her probably 10th, 8th, 11th birthday. Tell us a little more about your observations of our women and theirs.
Well, working with the Marines, the female Marines that I had a opportunity to be with, to work with, um, you see women exude power, and that was amazing to me. I enjoyed every minute of working with them because these were strong, determined women, and you look at even the younger ones, you knew they were going places in life. The lieutenants that I were, the female lieutenants, I was looking at them, I was thinking, my God, I can just see this person in corporate America, you, you know, being a CEO or somebody in a major position. So I saw that. And then the flip side of it is you see these young Afghan women, which, if given the opportunity, I'm sure they will blossom amazingly. They can make the country into a beautiful place. But they're not allowed to go to school. They're not allowed to have an education. They're ghosts. They're in the background. They're not allowed to hold any position in any government position or anything. So what do? You basically uh, imagine the country having two legs, men and women. You're cutting one leg off. So instead of walking on two legs, you're basically hopping around on one leg. How far are you going to get?
It's certainly why I don't understand why in today's America we're seeing a lot of outspoken women that are adhering to this. It doesn't make sense to me, but we'll get into more of that a little later. So now you are Jewish. You live in Los Angeles amongst Christians and the rest. Largest population of Iranians in America is in LA. You're in the book. You're in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban, a Muslim extremist group, extreme strict Sharia adherence, but came across a guy on our side with a Baha'i, I believe is how you say it, necklace, Baha'i necklace, the nine-pointed star. You recognized it from friends in LA. No one else would have. I mean, some guy from Oklahoma, no way. Um, that's quite interesting. Don't you think that your dog tags had a Star of David on it, being surrounded by all this religion, and same time you call it your book Land of Tears. What do you think God's plan is for that region?
I think this may sound funny, but I think God's plan depends on the people. In Farsi we have a saying,
That was Abraham and Moses' job.
yeah,
Yep.
you got, if you want my blessings, you got to move. If you keep moving in the right, if you keep moving in the wrong direction, you're not going to get my blessings. So I think the country as a whole keeps in Afghanistan, they keep moving in the wrong direction. Like I said, imagine women being the two legs on a person, and you cut one leg off. I don't think God meant for women to in Afghanistan to be basically sidelined and be possessions. Um, if things were to change, if there was some kind of an enlightenment, like Western Europe went through during the Renaissance, if something like that comes, then I would have some kind of hope for it. But again, being in that neighborhood where they're at, especially with Pakistan being right next door to them, and Pakistan has a lot of influence in Afghanistan. I don't think Pakistan wants Afghanistan to be stabilized. As long as you have that mentality, it's not going to change unless the people, like we're seeing in Iran right now, the uprising of the people in Iran, unless the people want it,
Mm,
the majority of the people want to change and uprise, it's not going to change. But then again, we see the brutality of the Taliban.
yeah.
They rule with sheer brutality, and they have zero, absolutely no regard for human life. How can you deal with something like this? How can you really deal with a mentality like this, or sit across the table and have a conversation with them and say, hey, you know what? Maybe look at this angle, look at things from this angle. They're so embedded in their ideology that getting them out would require generations. I always use an example. I say, after the Second World War, Germany was a highly developed, highly intelligent population. It took us 50 years to denazify Germany. That's two generations. Now, again, something similar with Japan, but you cannot have a the Talibanization of Afghanistan because they don't have the education, and they're nowhere near where they need to be in the 21st century. Another thing I always say is, we had over 70 nations in Afghanistan for 20 years, pouring trillions of dollars into the country. Afghanistan right now should have been the model of what a 21st century country should look like in the world. And look at it now.
No.
It really is sad.
It really is. So why did you do it? On page 74, you call home shallow and jaded. Most soldiers talk about mom, apple pie, democracy, a sweetheart back home to raise a family with. That's not what you did. What are you fighting for at age 45, by the way? Everyone should know you went into this at age 45. You weren't some 18, 19-year-old out of high school looking for, a paycheck. Uh, what were you fighting for by the time you got there?
I also mentioned in the book, when I was 18, I went and I took the test to join the Navy. And I passed the test, and at the last minute, I chickened out. When the economy happened and everything, it was like the perfect storm coming together. And I saw that small ad, which led me to call the number and then sign up in the Pashto class. I always thought, okay, I wanted to join the military, and maybe this is my second chance in life. And the jadedness, living in a place like LA, welcome to Hollywood. Everybody's so superficial. I mean, even people that we call, and I use this term very loosely, people that we call friends. You sit across from them and you look at them, and their behavior, the stuff they talk about. Not passing a judgment, absolutely not. But seeing that, I'm thinking, is this what life is? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Sitting here, engaging in conversation that when I go, I get off the table and I get in my car, I can't even remember what we talked about. Did I walk away from this evening spending 3 hours with people? Did I walk away feeling like kind of energized and rejuvenated? Or did I walk away from it feeling like I just got run over by an 18-wheeler truck? And most of the time, it was I felt like I was hit by an 18-wheeler. It drained me. The conversations were so shallow, and it was draining. And I think at one point I referred to my three lady friends that two of them were talking about yarmulkes for their for their wedding, upcoming wedding. One wanted cubic zirconias, sewn on top, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are these people talking about? The other one wants the steak butterflied, and I'm looking at the steak, and I think this is a perfectly good piece of meat. I mean, what the hell is butterfly? Is I mean, I eat steak all my life, and I never had it butterfly. Not to say you should have your meal the way you like it, but I think the
Very
value
very
placement was
superficial, it sounds.
very
Yeah.
superficial, yeah. And I think there's more to life than again, go get your manicure, your pedicure, fix your hair, all that stuff. Enjoy that purse, all that stuff. I'm not taking anything. Believe me, I would like the same stuff for me and for my family as well.
Well, amongst the troops, you said sincerity was priceless. You wrote about a meal and how you would never receive gratitude amongst friends in LA. That's the story you just told. Is that an LA thing, you think? The wrong friends, or too soft living in the hills to appreciate what the military does to keep them safe, where the warriors have gratitude, let's call it?
I think in a way how we said Afghanistan is in a bubble. Some I think LA has its own bubble. And I have friends, yes, they every year they go on vacations and everything. And I ask them every year, okay, where did you go for vacation? Oh, I went to Tuscany, I went to south of France. Next year, where'd you go for vacation? I went to Tuscany, I went to south of France again next year. And I tell them, don't you want to expand your horizon and go someplace that you've never been? Okay, we already know you've gone to Tuscany and south of France and all that stuff. But don't you want to go somewhere where you can actually touch life and feel life and be amongst people that even in their wildest imaginations cannot dream having a meal in one of the restaurants that you go to on daily basis? Don't you want to get involved with people like that? That always meant something to me. And I think that comes from my upbringing because even like I said earlier, my father had so many employees and a lot of them were from villages. And I think one of the things that my parents did, taking us to those villages every year, a couple of times a year, and exposing us to kids my age, we're running around and playing with kids barefoot, in our shorts and, snot coming down our nose, just having a great time. That exposed me to a different kind of life. And then I would go back to my city life and I'd shower and I have my nice clothes. But at the same time, I kind of enjoyed that minimalist, that bare bones kind of life. I felt that the simplicity always appealed to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You're a Texan. You're a
unfortunately,
Texan at heart. That's
yeah, living, I'm sure, you feel the same in Nashville. LA is the same. This is Hollywood.
Yeah, I get it. A lot of
Everything
those
is,
folks don't even know where the cow that is in their hamburger came from, much less that there's another world out there. So you called your time part of a small battle in a big war that wouldn't end in your lifetime. Did you think what you were doing was futile? And do you still think that 15 years later?
I think my main objective, obviously, was once I got there, I realized, okay, if I can make one difference in one person's life, be it one of our own people or one of the local folks, that would be, I've done something greater than myself. And believe me, I'm not trying to tout myself as a hero, not by far. But I kind of felt that maybe there was a calling in me that said, you know what, you got to do something, even though I knew. And also in the beginning of the book, I had to add that one paragraph saying that after we pulled out of Bagram Air Base, and when the suicide bomber blew himself up and killed 13 of our own, I knew that that war will never end. It will continue in one shape or another, and it is continuing in one shape or another. It just kind of devolves into something or evolves into something else. It kind of becomes covert, and then at some point it comes to the top again and it becomes overt. So that, as long as you have that kind of mentality and that kind of I go back to the word mental darkness. You will have issues that will come up again and again and again. But it's morphing itself in a different way. Before we would watch the beheadings on TV, those people saw how those things would actually work against them. So now they're doing things differently. They still behead people. I just saw a video of what was going on in Syria with the Kurdish people. All the beheadings. I mean, it's it, it's amazing. It's crazy. And don't stop for a second to think that stuff like that is not going on in Afghanistan right now. It
No,
is.
no, it's they're right. Like you
It is.
said, 1500s all over again.
Yeah.
You said the difference between us and the Taliban is we value life, all life, even a donkey's. When you were in country, did you get the impression there was nothing we were going to be able to do for them?
You know, the thing was that we were supposed to win hearts and minds of the local population. That's one thing that was being, that was being kind of promoted. We're here to win hearts and minds, but you really can't win hearts and minds where there's such a big gap between two societies. Like I said, you can win hearts and minds if you're dealing with an educated population that is not embedded in religion to the point that they're not even willing to listen. So for me to be there, I thought even if I can make an impact on one person's life, local person, uh, I've done something right in
Yeah.
my life. So that was the whole thing.
When your Marine pal Bruiser asked you what a Pepperdine grad is doing there, it reminded me of the movie Platoon with Charlie Sheen's character. And Bruiser hands you your first weapon in that moment. Did translators from a private company like you usually go armed, no basic training, and end up getting into firefights constantly, or just you?
No, there were other hiring contracting companies that would allow uh, the Terps to carry weapons, but a sidearm. But then again, it depended on who you're with, what team you're with, what team you're assigned to. The teams were more lenient than the hiring company. The hiring contracting company, you had to sign that you will not carry a weapon. You will not touch a weapon. But again, imagine when you're in a situation where you need every person uh, to be engaged. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there with your thumb up your ass,
Yeah.
or you got to do something.
You're certainly
You
not going to
know,
be translating, what bullets are flying at your head.
yeah.
The
What are you
scene
going
where
to do?
you
Raise a white flag and say, "Hey, can we talk this over?" It's just not going to happen.
The scene where you rescue the T-boy on a motorcycle, very harrowing scene, made for a movie basically. But did you think this isn't exactly the job of a Marine, child rescue from a Muslim culture that's happening all over the Muslim world a million times a day, but almost dying for it. You almost died for that. Did you think like, wait, what are we doing?
I did, at a time like that, you don't think because there's no time to think. The only thing is, and I mentioned this, I think you're living in the moment, and the moment dictates that you need to survive. You need to stay alive. And it is my responsibility if there's a child there or if there's another person there, being even an adult. If I can do something to maybe help that person live another day, it is my obligation. So you don't think about, oh, well, screw this kid. Let me just say my own. You just don't think that way. At a moment like that, really everything just kind of narrows down to one thing: survival.
Yeah, you had a mission and you did it.
Yeah.
You got out in December 2011, right before Christmas. What's life like for you now, 15 years later?
Oh, that's requires a very long answer, but life has been good. Obviously, like everybody else, I've had my challenges coming back. I was actually when I came back home, I was on my way back to Afghanistan again, the February of 2012. But one afternoon, it was about, I think, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I asked my mom to have lunch with me. So we're in the car driving down a very busy 405 freeway at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If somebody's familiar with the 405 in LA at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a zoo.
I did it for
And
years. Yeah.
yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, an 18-wheeler driver fell asleep behind the wheel of the car and basically hit me from the side, and I started spinning, and he T-boned me and landed on top of my car. And I thought I'm gonna die because I saw the roof of my car cave in, and I just kept making myself smaller and smaller and smaller. And the only thing I remember was I was thinking, God, don't let my mom see me die in front of her,
Mm.
because my mother was sitting in the passenger seat. And the truck jackknifed, and the freeway just came to a complete stop on both sides. And again, I won't go into the details, but a few days after that, I flew back east to leave the country to get my gear again and leave. But at night, I woke up with the worst pain in my left shoulder. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I went into the showered under hot water, and I thought, okay, let me see what happens. I could not move my left shoulder because of the impact. It had taken a couple of days before, for the impact, for the pain to come.
Like
And
whiplash. Yeah.
yeah, and I had a frozen shoulder as a result of it. There was no way I was going to be able to pick up 150 pounds of gear. So I came back home. And again, looking back now, I was angry at the time, but I think it was God's way of telling me, you know what, you're not going back there. That's not where you're meant to go.
You did your time, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Couldn't he have just said it nicely instead of it hurt so bad?
I think in my case, one of the things, I was talking to one of the guys that I was with in Afghanistan, and they had this thing. The team that I was working with, they would always tell me, because I was in so many ambushes and so many uh, hitting IEDs and getting blown up. Obviously, when I was in a truck, they would always tell me, you're like the cat with 9 lives. You just don't want to die. And I would tell them, stop jinxing me, man. This thing is going to catch up with me at some point. So going through the truck, again, a couple of the guys that I'm still in contact with, they told me at the time, hey, you lost one more life. How many do you have left? And I kept telling them, man, listen, don't use this stuff.
Yeah.
So last year, last April, when I had to go through a minor outpatient procedure, 60 to 90-minute procedure, while I was on the OR table, uh, my bladder was lacerated and the iliac artery in my left leg was severed. So I lost about 5.5 liters of blood, and I went into cardiac arrest. I flatlined, and I saw myself standing in the corner, about maybe 3 feet off the ground, and looking at my body while the doctors and nurses were working on me. And I was telling myself, you need to thank that body because it carried you for all these years, and you need to let it go. And all of a sudden, it went black. Everything went black. Uh, the, I've never seen black like that in my whole life. And everything went black. And, you know, the next thing I know, I'm 7 days in the ICU, another 3 days in the general ward, and I come home. So I was thinking about this a lot. It gave me a lot of time for introspection and to think about it. And I think at that moment when everything went black for me, I think God covered my eyes with his hands and said, you're going back into that body. So now I got one more near death experience under my belt. I just hope that I got a few more lives left. And I was talking to my buddies after they had called me, and they said, "Why do you sound like this?" I said, "Because I was intubated and extubated. All my vocal cords were scratched." And they said, "Man, you just don't want to die, do you?" I said, "For God's sake, stop saying this."
Do you think we're finally seeing the people of Iran toss over the theocracy today with the millions in the streets, or is it just going to be another head fake that gets put down and they're right back to where they've been for Well, since 75.
Yeah, this time it's different. I was actually anticipating this to happen last September. And I was telling people it's going to happen, something is going to happen. The government is going to collapse last September. And people were laughing at me. Well, I missed the mark by a few months, but there's no going back. This government is going to collapse. It's just a matter of time. And for people who think, I hear it in the echo chambers amongst the Iranians, online and here and there. Well, why isn't America doing anything? You know what? We don't know what's happening on the ground there. And if you're naive enough to think that we don't have
We have a
contingency,
really bad track record of doing anything that we stick our noses into. We usually screw it up.
yeah, well, thanks to Jimmy Carter, he screwed it up in 1978. I mean, let's be honest. And this is not a political statement.
Yeah,
That is
that's what the history
there's
books
just
show. Yeah.
yeah. But I think if I'm willing to bet money on it that we have people on the ground in Iran right now. The Israelis have people on the ground in Iran right now. And for sure, the Russians and the Chinese have people on the ground in Iran right now. There's a fight going on that we're not seeing right now. There's a lot happening, and people say, oh, well, Trump said he's going to do this, but he's not doing it, he's pulling back. This stuff doesn't it's not like, it's not a matter of days. Sometimes it's a matter of weeks or months. The same way that the revolution infiltrated Iran, the Islamic Revolution in 1978, and it started. I remember my neighbors in my neighborhood. There was a teenage guy, and my dad told me he forbade me for talking to that guy because he was handing me books, and I was reading the books as a kid. And my dad saw me read the book. He said, "If the Savak catches you with this book, we're all going to jail." It was Khomeini pamphlets and communism, Marxist pamphlets that the guy was trying to brainwash me. He was trying to recruit me at a young age.
Hmm.
And that's how they infiltrated it. So this is going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to happen.
Okay. We got a few minutes left here. Did you ever see Khan or Bruiser again? Do you know if they made it home alive and well? And
This is one of the, I guess, one of the sources of, uh, I don't want to say depression, but I get sad from time to time when I think about them. Um, because they didn't want to be, these are people that have seen so much, they just want to disappear. They just want to they don't want to go in their past. They don't want to touch the past anymore. In that way, I envy them because I catch myself, kind of romanticizing the past where I need to let it go. So, do I wish that I could talk to them? 100%. But do I respect the fact that they want to be just left alone? 100%. Maybe someday we'll cross paths again. Um, we'll see. I don't know. I'm hoping for that day to come.
okay. Any plans for another book?
Well, I actually just finished the second book that is in the hands of the my agent. I'm hoping that maybe sometime this year it's going to get released. Yeah,
Fantastic. Okay, good.
yeah.
You said just one life changed would be considered a mission accomplished for you. Who is the life you look back on that you changed?
That would be uh, it would be very arrogant of me to even want to say that, because I don't want to take credit for something that I had to do as a person, as a human being. I I don't want to say that I changed someone's life because honestly, I just don't think that would be the right thing to say. I was there. It was my obligation. It was my mission, maybe by the guy upstairs, and I just leave it at that.
Okay, fair enough. So, Sanjar, I want to thank you for your time and, of course, your service. Tell our listeners where they can find out how to get your book and what the title maybe of the next one is so they can be on the lookout for it. Or social
Um,
media if you do that, which you should.
yeah, social media. I don't have a footprint on social media, but the book can be purchased from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online. You can look it up. And again, most of probably 98% of the proceeds are going toward veterans charities. So it's not something that I'm making a ton of money from it. But uh, if people would support me and support our vets in that sense, I'm forever grateful to them. Uh, I want to thank you for giving me this chance and to speak to you, and hopefully your audience will appreciate and enjoy the conversation that we had. And, and again, I want to thank, before anything, I want to thank God, and I want to thank our military for so selflessly giving, and people, unfortunately, some people not appreciating and not realizing what a sacrifice our men and women are making. It is just it is just amazing. The
That is
selfless
great. That is
is
great.
amazing.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And again, thank you for your service, for volunteering to do such a thing. We do have a voluntary military, and you were working with a private company. So you even had, let's say, less incentive to go and fight for the cause. And so thank you for doing it in the first place.
You
Uh,
know,
yeah. And bless you for, and good luck with this book. Thank you so much. Hang on, folks. I will be right back.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. I have missed you a ton. Glad to be back at it. I'm still Steve Abramowitz, and this is still the Heartland Journal podcast. Please hit that subscribe button and pass it around. Thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on a nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community and lovers of truth. Today, we are talking with special guest Sanjar Rohãm. Sanjar Rohãm, an Iranian American, was an in-demand successful business consultant in Los Angeles before the 2008 crash of the US economy compelled him to rethink his career choices after discovering an advertisement for a translator fluent in Pashto and willing to serve as an interpreter with the US Marines. By October 2010, he was on the front lines of Operation Enduring Freedom in the Taliban stronghold of Helmand province in Afghanistan, fighting suspicions from Marines because of his Persian ethnicity, as well as from Afghan interpreters. Rohãm attempted to prove himself by volunteering for every mission the command would allow, experiencing mortar attacks, IED detonations, losses of friends, and the additional dangers of being a foreigner in a land that promises harm to outsiders. His book, Land of Tears, is a gritty, make you squirm reflection on the sorrow, horror, and guilt that the American experience in Afghanistan inflicted on him. Roham's candor about the challenges and his humility about the commitment he upheld makes him feel like an old, respected friend to readers. From Iran to LA to Afghanistan and home again, let's meet this brave man and thank him for his service.
It's a long way to Nashville from that Napa Valley vine. Put me on a road less traveled. Lord, now I know why. God knew I'd get there in His perfect time.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee. Now I write songs about the heartland. My heartland's in Tennessee.